this is also why, like, if I want to paint this vision of what I want, I can. That's why I say I try to have a high intention, but also a low attachment. Otherwise, I may be getting what I'm supposed to be having. What if, like, I try to, like, when I go through rough patches in my life, one of the things that I tell myself, and I really try to believe, even when it's hard, is like, this is preparing me for something. This is forging the skills that I'm going to need, and the only way to forge these skills is through pressure and hard times and things like that. So I believe there's a purpose behind pain. There's a purpose behind whatever you're going through. So who am I to say this shouldn't be happening? Because that was my attached vision, and that's what I'm attached to. Versus that may not be the way whatever you're into may have had for you, or what is actually setting you up for something better.
Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Smith, and if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and you want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You will find the links down below. Today, my friends, got a pretty cool fella. Once again, I have another spiritual brother from another mother, in a sense. And yeah, listen to his stuff. Really good vibes. He works from the inside out, and it is absolutely phenomenal. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Jared Hamilton.
Bro, you weren't joking about Bruce Buffer vibes. I love it.
Oh, that's good.
That's amazing.
So, question that I like to start with, and it's a thinker. I purposefully like to get people thinking. I think it's very important that people know the person behind the thing that the people do, because when we know the people, then we know the perspective. When we know the perspective, we understand the passion, and then the perseverance, and so on. So, with that context, the question that I like to ask is, how do you impact the lives of the people around you?
The only way you can, which is from the inside out, where everything stems from. I think, like, that's the short and sweet answer. Like, an early mentor of mine gave a little adage. He says, if you don't fix the root, you can't change the fruit. Just because everything, it's why, like, I have this giant piece on my arm. Like, if you're watching the YouTube video, it's why that I have this giant tree that's growing up my arm, is because everything starts there. And if you don't address the nasties down under, and nothing on the surface is going to matter or be sustained or anything. But it doesn't matter what we're talking about: fitness, nutrition, money, relationships, marriage, happiness. If we don't address this stuff, like, outer work without inner work doesn't work, is kind of my little adage. I say. So, and that's how. So how to impact is the only way you can, which is from the inside out.
I really like that, dude. I like that quite a bit.
Well, that's the show, guys. See?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Bruce, yeah, hit it. Hit every part play on that one. Yeah, that's awesome. That's sweet, dude. So with that, where, because I resonate with that quite a bit. I think that the seeds that we plant, we have to hit it at the root, and then whatever fruit we get from that seed is just going to keep on growing. And we have to, even if we don't want to, sometimes it's oftentimes the best thing, or it's in our best interest, to chop down one tree that we've been tending for so long, and then start the process of growing another tree, or just changing up the fruits that we're consuming. So in saying that, how is it that you change people from the inside out? What do people get confused, or they're uncertain about what that really means?
Usually starting off, yeah, because there's like this. I mean, what is it? The continuum of awareness, I guess you'd call it, is like unconscious incompetence. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how fucked up shit is, But like Joe Dispenza talks about it, you can't escape a jail you don't know you're trapped in. It's one of my favorite things. So the first stage is we have to make the people aware of it. If, like, you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I can't get my shit together, my stuff is bad. Well, like, we got to figure out, well, like, what's under the hood? What's deeper? But to answer your question, like, how do we get people to that is, I always say my one superpower is I can make anything obnoxiously simple, because I'm personally not, like, this is not just me being self-deprecative. I'm not that smart naturally. Like I'm not like I was to be honest, an awkward, undereducated homeschool kid. Like that kind of stuff. I'm not that smart, but the more I can compare for me, the more I can take this crazy complex thing and tell someone how it's like brushing your teeth or how it's like this thing you're really, really good at, the better neural pathway and neural connections are made. So that's the thing is usually when I'm talking with people, especially it's usually in the realm of weight loss or things like that, is just through a few questions. Like, let's say everyone's like the whole diet. So what I call this is dieting from the inside out. And some people aren't sold on that yet. And well, one, my job, I'm not trying to like convince either. So like, that's why I put out the content I do, is so the right people who are more mentally, emotionally and ready, it's like when, when the student is ready, the master appears, that kind of, old modality. I think there's a level of that, but when someone just fully doesn't understand, I think it's important to be able to logically explain it, because it's such an emotionally charged thing for most people. And I think we should be able to logically explain it. We're like, oh, I guess 1 + 1 is 2. That makes sense. But how I do that usually is when people it's usually when people are struggling and everyone's like, oh, I just can't get the weight off. And I go, cool. If I could just, how much are we trying to lose? Wait, 50 pounds, dope. If I could just snap my fingers and the 50 pounds magically disappears, is it staying off? Everyone goes, oh, well, probably not. I go, okay, well, why though? Well, I'd still be binge eating. Oh, okay. What else? Well, I'd still be emotionally eating. I feel you. Well, would you still be sabotaging that whole, like you do good and then something happens and you fall off? Yeah, that'd probably be happening. Okay. What about like your relationship with food? Would that still be fucked? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And we like logically walk through like, okay, so you just admitted that magic Jared powers doesn't make your problems go away. Like everyone wants the quick fix, the magic pill, but like you just agreed it would not take your problems away. So let me flip that question on its head. What if I could snap my fingers? Binge eating stops, emotional eating stops, sabotaging stops, and mentality issues stop, all or nothing stops, your identity's fixed, your inner child's healed. All of that stuff is fixed. Do you think those 50 pounds would stand a chance to stay? And they're like, no. I go, yeah, it would just happen as a byproduct. It would come off. But the problem is how we ought to address all that stuff. But the issue for most people that they don't realize is weight loss is the trigger for those things for most people. It's like, I'll see people go to like, let's say therapy, a food freedom coach, an inner game person separate from their journey, which is great, but they're too far removed from the trigger. It's like, I can be zen as fuck at the bottom of the ladder. It's the height that triggers the fear. I can be at the bottom of a ladder and be like, I am great. Oh yeah, I understand why I shouldn't be scared of heights. Halfway up that ladder, most people start to get their flutter going. It's because the trigger is what the proceeding up the ladder is what triggers the fear. So we have to handle it there. It's why facing in fear gets over the fear of whatever it is. Well, if you're so far removed, you're not trying to lose weight, you're doing all this stuff, you're over here, of course you can get good. You'll stop binge eating, you'll be great. You won't be sabotaging because you're not going anywhere. But then you're like, all right, I'm ready to lose weight, and you'll get triggered like an ex-boyfriend. So which is why what we do is we have to fix it in the same container. That's my thing with it. So
I like that. Something I think of as well is when we're not aware of these things, a saying that I like is, it's hard to read the nutrition label when you're inside the jar. And sometimes we gotta pop out of that jar in order to read the nutrition label. And then how you ended your last part is how that kind of looped around. But so that's what really popped out. Oh, right, because it was the containers, because you said container. Yeah. So I just wanted to toss in the imagery of the pickle container. Jar. Yeah. Visualize this.
Right. That's awesome. Truly though, like the thing is, most people, it's their issues is the desire to lose weight, for example, is the trigger for most people. They only say, fuck it, I'm an all or nothing person and binge when it's weight loss, but it's not with their money when they overspent at the grocery store. They're an all or nothing person over here and want to start over Monday, but when on a Thursday night they forgot to brush their teeth because they fell asleep on the couch, they're not starting over Monday to brush their teeth, right? Like we have this whole subset of different rules for weight loss where we have issues, but the rest of our life thrives in balance and we're great. But this is the issue, is for most people, it's the desire to lose weight triggers the sabotage. The desire to lose weight starts the binge eating. It's when they get serious about their health. Oh, now I can't have my favorite foods in moderation anymore. It's where all these issues become a thing. So if that's the trigger, we can't avoidance never made anything better. So we can't, if let's say you and I, Kylie, let's say you and I have issue. Let's say you offended me or I offended you and we've got a beef between us. We are not getting that resolved, not talking to each other. Right. If I say, fuck you, I don't want anything to do with you ever again, but I'm over here in La La Land and I want to fix this, but I won't look at you. well, then it's not getting fixed. But then people wonder, they're like, oh, whatever's going on with their journey here in weight loss, they got all these inner game issues. Well, then you're trying to go way over here to fix it, but your problem is right here. We can't avoid this anymore. You have to fix it in the same container, which is where most people are stuck, because the mind is all about self-preservation, or the brain specifically is about self-preservation. So this is why most people like sabotage and they avoid doing this stuff, because it's gross. When people are dieting from the inside out, fixing the root, all that stuff, it's your inner darkness. It's this, or what like a mentor of mine calls it, he calls it the unseenness. It's this stuff that you don't want to look at. But then because we don't want to look at it because it sucks, we judge it. That's when we put the meaning behind sadness, anxiety, overwhelm. I should be further ahead, things like that. We put judgment with it, and you're not getting on the other side of it while judging it. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. I like to call that the ick.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just feel like ick. It's just
Yeah.
gross. And something I like to refer to for folks as well when it comes to understanding how to face something is when we are brave enough to face something, we can name it. And when we name something, we have power over it. And I think of the movie, it wasn't Insidious. It was the other one. It has like Patrick in it or something like that. Or maybe it was Insidious. But anyways, so it's the one with the ghost's nurse, like the zombie nurse, like that one. And so they're like, we got to figure out how to kill this witch or this nun. And they're just like freaking out, and they have no idea. And then the lady goes down and she learns the name of the demon. And then when she had the name of the demon, when you have the demon's name, I guess you have power over the person or over that demon. So they don't ever say their true names. They're always deceitful about their names. So she was just named it, and I think it was Valak. It's like Valak, blah, 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 and whatever happened, but had power over that thing of immense fear and pain and anxiety and even other ones like regret or things that everyone experiences, but it's not like sadness. Like sadness is surface level, but it's when we're in regret and like recognizing how we contributed and just making peace with that by naming it and, in my opinion, writing it out so that we can perceive it differently, so that we have a better relationship with it. Man, it's a cool way. It's a cool way to like switch things up, to like putting a name to things. It's like so much smoother, so much easier.
Well, it's you're I mean, a pattern can't stay a pattern if you're aware of it. You know what I mean? So if you see a pattern and you now call it out, this is it. This is what it looks like, walks like, talks like, smells like. Well, now you, number one, are more equipped to handle it and address it. But now it is physically outside of you. Something I think it was Tony Robbins that talked about it, is when you think you are the problem, you'll never solve it, because your brain is about self-preservation. So if you think you're the problem and you get rid of the problem, that means we get rid of you, which doesn't work. But when you put it outside of you, that's its name. I'm not it. Things like I see this a lot when someone calls themselves a dieter, right? Dieter is a noun. It's not dieting is a verb. Like, oh, I went on a diet, or I'm on a diet. That's a verb. A dieter is a noun. It's who you are. It's part of your identity. Well, what happens when you lose the 40 pounds? You don't need a diet anymore, but you're a dieter. Ooh, sabotage kicks in, because it's like, oh shit, we're threatened. Let's find a way to gain the 40 pounds back so we can go on a diet again. Or the same thing for a binger, or same thing for an emotional eater, or same thing for whatever label we give ourselves of, oh, I'm never that person. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not a morning person, whatever it is. Well, when your identity is made up of things you don't like about yourself that you're trying to change, you'll forever stay in that cycle, because it's part of you. So if you're, versus naming it like, no, that's this over here, that's the old self, that's who I used to be, that's that thing over there, that's Iris or whatever. Yeah, it has to be separate from you, because if you are the program or the pattern, then you're always going to keep repeating it. But once you remove yourself, now the pattern loses control over you, or power over you, so to speak.
Man, that's good stuff. It's something that's really cool, because you mentioned my like energy before we were even recording, but when we were chatting. And something that I gotta say is, when you speak, you have a very good peace to you. There's a lot of peace to that.
Well, I appreciate that, because
Yeah,
I feel like I'm like, bah, like,
yeah,
like I feel like it's interesting you say that, because I think I'm sometimes naturally a little too intense, a little too baha, whatever. Like, how much caffeine have you had today kind of energy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you say there's almost like a piece about it. I think it's interesting.
I think it's because I think I'm kind of vibing it from I just see that it's like you're just really into it, and I feel the passion part,
Mhm.
but we're just like you're just participating in the way that you
Sure.
understand it. It's like peace, but it's
Yeah.
like you know when it's like threatening movements and peaceful,
Yeah.
even though you're
So
flailing.
so what's funny is I had a lady I was speaking with one time. She was a client of ours. Insanely successful with the program and stuff. But she was one of the most probably spiritual people I don't know if I've ever met. But she's insanely spiritual, insanely intuitive, insanely like in the present moment. Like I'm talking about like deep, 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 deep in this stuff. And she said, Jared, I can't figure you out. And I go, what do you mean? Because like that's fascinating. I'm not offended by that. I'm fascinated by it. I go, what do you mean? Because I'm like, emotions on my sleeve, everything on the table, not holding anything back, not hiding anything. Like, and I believe like you truly can't, because like energy doesn't lie and things like that, but and
Totally.
intuition and things like that. But I'm like not even trying. And she's just like, I can't figure you out. And I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, you're crazy. You're like a psycho. And I go, agreed. And she goes, but you're also there's this like emotionally neutral part of you that's like one of my favorite words is equanimity. I have two. So I feel like
Ooh.
this is it on my I'm a big tattoo guy. On my wrists I have my newest tattoos, which is on my right wrist I says ambition, and on my left wrist it says equanimity, because I believe I've struggled with the balance of these two states, and I believe I have the best handle on it currently, but I've always got to monitor it. And I think the magical sweet spot is between ambition and equanimity. Like if we put it on a Venn diagram. And I think this is what she's meaning. She's like, you're a psycho, like, you know, like that crazy ambitious psychopath that's just like kill everything in sight until I accomplish and win the battle. But like, you can't live there. I lived there for so many years of my life. I have actually a blockage in memories from 23 to 27 because of I was so just in the world of ambitious. What's next thing? It's not good enough. Like Dwayne Johnson vibes, like,
Just
but
hardcore intense.
just yeah, like denial of this moment, like, oh, it's never good enough, never satisfied, all of that, which you can accomplish some shit. But the problem is you're not happy, you're not present, you're not grateful, you're not anything. But I got introduced to this concept of equanimity and emotional neutrality, calm within the storm, things like that. And
A
so
harmonious hustle.
yeah, harmonious hustle. I love that. But I feel like this is what she was talking about when she said, I can't figure you out. You have this, you're a psycho. But there's also this like calming, like neutral, emotional, whatever part of you. And I truly think it's this like ambitious equanimity thing. So that's why when you said like there's so much peace, I'm like, where?
Some of that's kind of neat. Yeah, here I am. I'm just like, I'm just going to tell you my thoughts about you just
Yeah,
live.
I love it.
But something that's kind of neat. I think that how you described it is a similar route to, let's say, some like maybe not a similar route, but you understand the one extreme to the other
Yep.
extreme. People usually try to stay within one extreme. So no
Yep.
matter what, if we're feeding energy into something, the pendulum's going to be swinging. We just get to choose which pendulum swings.
Yeah.
So you went from ambition, then you went to, let me know if I got it wrong, equanimity.
Yes.
And then, as in I got it wrong. No, just fine.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Equanimity. And now you found that balance, which in my mind is similar to Gandhi, where he had to understand his capacity for great violence in order to understand his capacity for great peace.
Mm.
So you needed to understand your capacity for ambition and maybe like the positives and the negatives, so that you have a more informed decision to pop on over to equanimity. And you're like, you have the gauge and you're just like, one. You just know when you're up or when you're down. I guess you probably know how to regulate it pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I think this is where people, no matter what they're trying to do, like let's say it's weight loss, they need to know when to lean in and turn on certain switches. Like this, everyone, even like balance. I hate the concept of balance, but I love the concept of harmony. Like there's a difference. Balance is always on a sliding scale, and you can go through seasons. If you have balance but not harmony, you're broken. But you can have harmony without balance and be thriving. If that makes sense. You see,
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So
yeah, that was awesome.
And I feel like the way
Thanks.
that when I first heard about equanimity, the concept of turning it on, like a switch, like you can be like ambitious, accomplish, switch. Okay, I need to go back to equanimity a little bit, or I'm a little too hard here. There are times where like, okay, I probably should turn on the ambition side. I probably should be, I may be in a season of imbalance in my life for some reason. But if you're in harmony with that, you're good. Because you can have imbalance but harmony, but you don't always have harmony when you have balance. I mean, how many times in weight loss do we see people, this a little bit more surface level example, they're like, oh, I want to enjoy vacation, but I feel so I'm going to indulge, but I feel like I shouldn't. Well, you're not in harmony. You're actually doing imbalance. You're like, I'm going to enjoy myself and not be too hard on myself, but they're living in like, oh fuck, I'm ruining everything. Well, you're not in harmony. You are in your actions, you're balanced, but you're in your state, you're not in harmony. You know what I mean? But I know people who are doing, let's say they're athletes and they have to be a little more rigid for the game or whatever, but they're in harmony with their decision making and their state, so they're good. They're not always on the same playing field.
Yeah, that's neat. Because then if you're able to, I find it like that's like a piece point as well, is when you have your behaviors and your intentions that are in alignment, and then when those are in alignment, then you can make peaceful decisions. So even if you're making the conscious decision rather than the unconscious decision, or you're rather than being a creature of whim, you're a being of will. You are choosing. Even if, like, for myself, I'm like, I'm okay with having an ice cream because I know I'm just like, more often than not, just totally fine with doing whatever, but I'll prioritize it. But I'll always remember, it's always like, I don't need to, or no, it's basically just making peace and being like cool with having the ice cream and just enjoying it and being there, having that time, and just because that's something that could help out with so much other good time, good feels as well.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's the thing, is the concepts that we talk about here, we can apply anywhere, whether it be fitness, weight loss, your relationship, your money, your partnerships, whatever. So
I got a pretty solid question for you. What is, if you thought about it, or if you have an idea of it, or how much you're willing to share, what is it that you have as a vision for, like, it's going to be a very broad one, but I'm just curious, but a lifetime achievement, or what is it that your vision is?
I have two sides to that.
Okay.
I have a short term and a broad term. Short term, I have specific goals that I'm trying to hit, right? Like I want to be, like, for example, like I have this big thing of like closing out a stadium, for example, like in the speaking world. I love speaking. I feel like my life is meant to be in front of a microphone. I've never felt more at home than when I'm speaking. So which ironically is it was what I was made fun of most as a child. So I think it's interesting. It's like, oh, the Hamiltons are here when they won't shut the fuck up, like that kind of stuff. But now, like, one of my favorite things ever is getting on stage and speaking and things like that. But so I have like outcomes that I want, like things that I want to achieve and things that I feel like I'm supposed to do. But then, as hard as it is, when I'm naturally such an ambitious psychopath, naturally, like I got to have everything out to the T label, what I want, all these things. But I also don't even know. I don't like I didn't know I was gonna be doing this. I didn't know we'd have this great conversation. Some of the best things in my life that had happened hit me sideways, and I couldn't have, like, this is where it really opened my eyes when a mentor of mine, well, it's Kyle, to be honest. I know from our off-camera conversation, he said, like we have a tendency to set, not that goals are bad, not that setting a vision is bad, but it is also like no comparison for what like life, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, has in store for you. Like what happens, like, let's say monetarily, what if I'm like case in point, let's talk about money. I thought back when I because of my associations, think that my awareness, I thought making 100 grand a year was a ton of money. And I'm like, I just want to make 100 grand a year. Like I almost took a shitty physical therapy job that I wasn't happy with because I could make 80 grand a year. Then I met a dumbass who made 50 grand a week. So my goal was, I'd love to make 100 grand a year. I met a dumbass 28-year-old dude who made $50,000 a week. And I'm like, I didn't even know that world. Like I've never thought about making an annual income in a week. Like my brain wasn't even on that awareness level. So who am I to have this, like, we'll say mentally I'm in 6th grade. Who am I to create this vision for my life when I'm not even at like 12th grade mental and emotional levels, when I have this whole other vision and am more in tune with myself and think whatever, back when think about, imagine like when you're little and you're like filled with all of these, and people now still are, these worries and doubts and pressures from like what's practical, what's not. And then that's when people are like, oh, I think I'll become a CPA. Nothing wrong with CPAs by any means, but what if they really want to become a speaker or a musician or an artist or whatever these things? There's that version of you somewhere. But we get in our own heads when we create these visions because of what's practical or what's, whatever. Or people in weight loss, like, oh, I don't think I could actually look like that, so I'll just settle for this. But the problem is you actually could have done that with the right coaching and mentorship. So this is why I have like, there's a gentleman I shared a stage with back in, I was at a speaking event in Arizona. He said high intention, low attachment. And I think that is the epitome of what I try to embody more, is we can have a good intention of this is what I want with my life. This is the outcome that I'm looking for. But the intention is just what you intend to do, but low attachment. Whether, because there's one of my favorite music artists who's very into this world of transformation and spirituality and stuff is Russ. Do you ever listen to Russ, Kyle?
I don't know. Maybe I probably have heard.
Big hip hop rap guy, but
I'll check him out.
A lot of his music is actually about this, which I think is great. But he talks about attachment's the root of all suffering. And I think that's so profound, where it's because things aren't going our way. I mean, how many times with clients or with people trying to lose weight that they think they should be losing 3 pounds a week, but you and I know they're not going to be successful with that. And it's great if they lose a pound a week, and but they were attached to their 3 pounds a week. So because they're so attached, they're living in suffering because they think they should be losing more. And then they're judging themselves and shaming themselves. So this is why with my personal goals, I may have the idea of what I want, but what if I'm not like I think of it this way now is, I'm currently living my past self's dream, right? Currently I'm actually way beyond that, if I'm being honest, but I naturally have this, I'm not careful, I naturally have this resentment of, I should have been here a long time ago. I should have been here when I was 27. I resonate. But I also, if I were to objectively zoom out and look back, I would not have been able to handle it. I would not have been able to handle the pressure, the leadership, the income, the responsibilities. Old Jared would not have been able to handle it. I was not ready for all of it. So it was a blessing. As hard as it is to say, my resentment doesn't like it. I would have fucked it up so bad. I can say that looking back now, I could not have handled it. I would have been stupid. I would have done all sorts of dumb shit. So this is also why, like, if I want to paint this vision of what I want, I can, that's why I say I try to have a high intention, but also a low attachment. Otherwise, I may be getting what I'm supposed to be having. What if, like, I try to, like, when I go through rough patches in my life, one of the things that I tell myself, and I really try to believe, even when it's hard, is like, this is preparing me for something. This is forging the skills that I'm going to need. And the only way to forge these skills is through pressure and hard times and things like that. So I believe there's a purpose behind pain. There's a purpose behind whatever you're going through. So who am I to say this shouldn't be happening? Because that was my attachment vision, and that's what I'm attached to, versus that may not be the way whatever you're into may have had for you, or what is actually setting you up for something better. Like, you ever seen that? It's like a religious-y picture, depending on like your audience, but it was a picture of this little girl was holding this little tiny beat up teddy bear. And she's like this. She's like, no, don't take it. It's a picture of like God holding a giant teddy bear behind his back. And he's like, just give it to me. And he's like, you give me your old beat up little teddy bear, and I'm literally about to give you this. But she's so attached to her shitty little teddy bear. And he's like, I've got this big, bad, amazing, brand new one. Just give it to me. And again, this is not about like God or spirituality. It's about, we're in so many cases too attached to the thing we want, and it's blocking us from the thing that we actually are not even consciously aware of. And the reason that resonates most with me is because I'm experiencing it. If I would have had, like, my ceiling was like a third of what I do right now. It was me. I would be massively settling in my life if I was so attached to my old ceiling, if that kind of makes sense. So
absolutely. On that one, to have like a cool part is the ceiling that is above us eventually becomes the floor we stand on. It's just boom, boom, boom. And something that I like about the visual, I was trying to envision it. I'm glad you like elaborate on it. Like, I see it's really cool. It's almost like, if I was thinking of the way that I understood it, it would be similar to me participating in attachment rather than participating in trusting.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like the visual I got from that visual too. But I like that. I'm gonna remember that reference for a while. That's a good one. That's really good. I'm also gonna steal high intention, low attachment. That is like right up my alley, man.
Like, I want to get that tattooed on me, like, somewhere.
Totally, dude. Man, like, I have a skull, a rose, and an hourglass, memento mori style. I'll just pop that somewhere in there, like
There you
around
go.
there. Yeah, it'll be cool.
I've got a giant tree, a skull, a rose, and a pocket watch. I've got
Nice.
but
Oh
there's
yeah,
I could
yeah.
I could go down some rabbit holes on all that. So
That's pretty sweet. Is the tree anything in particular like Yggdrasil, for example?
it's a lot. So it's there's something that's always been a thing for me is like the concept of grow or die. We are only growing or dying. Nothing sits still. So we need to be always in a stage of growth. There's all these aspects like the roots to the root cause of all these things from the inside out. There's like an acorn in the top of the tree because like be careful of the thoughts of things and the beliefs you have because every seed can grow into a giant tree. There's all these like
Mm.
analogies around the tree and growth. The big thing specifically though, is you can't really see it. So on the outer part of my bicep, there's an eagle on a broken branch, and I told my tattoo artist I specifically want an eagle on a branch that's broken or breaking, because I had a mentor or a book, I can't remember which it was, years ago. They said, why are birds not scared to land on broken branches?
Mm.
Because no bird is afraid of, oh, is this branch going to break? It's because they just like fly away and find a different one. It's not a big deal. It's so one of the things in the mental health world that I've struggled with most of my life is anxiety. And I would always worry and I would get scared and like, oh, all this stuff. But it's like we are creatures of pivoting. Where it's nothing for us to pivot and adjust. And that just wasn't your branch. But that doesn't mean like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die and it's all this stuff. It's we can just fly away and go to a different branch. So there's like that a little bit part of it for me. Um, and so that's the big piece with the tree. Like there on the tree there's also like leaves falling, which represents like everything has a stage of death. Like there's like, again, not be so attached. Like an analogy I like is trees don't try to hang on to their leaves and be so attached to the leaves. It's like, no, there's seasons of death, and it's okay for that to happen. So there's all sorts of like, I'm a big analogy person in general, but tree analogies are like my jam. So
I think that's sweet. I'm a big fan of analogies as well.
yeah.
I my go-to thing for me to remember things, because a lot of what you say is it resonates quite a bit, my man. Like even the school system and just being in school, I wasn't the best student as well, so that was a pretty cool little neat little thing. Uh, when it comes to uh, ooh, yeah, that's a cool one. When it comes to, I just had to think on that one. I
You're
was
good.
like,
You're good.
do I want to go down that rabbit hole? When it comes to I want to actually, yeah, I want to touch on something that we were talking about, or something I listened to on a podcast of yours, and it's really cool. Like you do have some awesome knowledge bombs, and it was the frame of mind of future casting, like future casting your future self, and it's something that I really enjoy talking about, and then hearing you talk about it as well. We definitely got from the same source, and I kind of think of it like even further ahead, and I
Yeah.
want to introduce a thought experiment that I think you would have fun participating in on a long
Okay.
walk. But it's the grandfather frame. It's thinking of like your 80-year-old self, and how has that frame impacted your life? So having that thought process, how has that impacted your life?
It just brings a level of like wisdom into my decision making, and because like that's the thing is whenever I've gone to these places like this, like future casting, like, all right, what would the me in 10 years say to me right now, or especially the me in 80, like at 80, 90 years old, say to me right now, with it's usually I'm in a not great place, emotionally. I'm not okay, or stuff is struggling. There's something is usually I should go to these places more when things are good, but
Mm.
I have a tendency to spend more of the time there when things aren't so good because we all go through the cycle. Um, and it's usually when I'm wanting to be really reactive, it's the total opposite. It's almost like another analogy. Like think about like Ninja Turtles. Like when you see like the boys, they're like, "Oh, Master Splinter! Oh my gosh!" And he's just like calm, cool, and the epitome of equanimity. And he says like three words. He's like, you do not have because you aren't ready, and then walks away like shit like that, and they're like, oh. Like, you know what I mean? So I feel like for me, the future casting of like the 80-year-old self, it brings a level of wisdom, um and major levels of equanimity and just better decision making. I also believe this is going to get, I've never said this out loud to anyone. I also believe there's like, trying to think how to word this. I
without
also believe,
censorship.
yeah, no, I also think there's this level of, there's this universal part I can actually connect to, and it's actually accurate information. It's like if I were to say it's like a me tapping into quite literally God, that or whatever you believe in. Whereas I don't feel like it's just like area. It's almost like you have an in, like you know how like you got a club, like, oh, I got an in, I can get this past the security guard. I feel like I actually and believe that I actually have like this level of this like in universally where I can actually get actual data, actual information, and actual help. If that makes sense. I'm trying to figure out how
It
to
does.
word this. So
I can piggyback off of it too.
okay.
So with I also similar kind of thought process. Have not said this like Kendra knows. I had like just a freaking brain dump and then just spouted up all this stuff, but I can very much so resonate. And she would be the only person I've said that kind of stuff to, but I definitely I and chatting with a couple of other folks that I know, some people refer to like it as the universe as God, creator, or soup. Like a mass consciousness, a universal consciousness where we are all part of this
Yeah.
one song,
Universal
universe.
intelligence that like Napoleon
Exactly.
Hill talks about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of it's kind of neat thinking of it from having that like just that knowledge go and then it's like the universe is dumping into your skull bucket, your nah, scuck it. and and just like you just get to like, and if this resonates, let me know, because I know it's like really sounds really strange, but it does feel like there's an intuition, like you just trust the information that's going. And then I find that I find that the more in alignment that we are, where we are embodying two dualities, so equanimity and ambition, then we become what is called what is it, the circle, like you know when a Venn diagram overlaps,
Yeah.
there's the circle, there's the middle, that is the vesicus Pisces, and the vesicus Pisces is the embodiment of two dualities. And so the thought exercise that I was thinking of for the grandfather frame, because the only limitations to the mind that we have are the limitations that we put into it, right? So I asked myself the question, I wonder, because this was inspired by like the Sumerian texts where it's like the Sumerian gods would live to something stupid like 53,000 years or something crazy. So I asked myself the question, is like, what would Kyle at 700 years old be like?
Wow. Wow. That's
And so
crazy.
I envision that, and I big comic book nerd, like that was what I wanted to do when I was a kid. That was the first thing that I was like, I want to be a comic book nerd, or well, I was still a nerd but an artist. And so I create characters. So a couple of concepts that I have, their characters are the dapper dude, that's the inner role model. Then there's the Mr. Simpleton, who is the inner rival. Then there's Kyle Prime, me speaking to you, the one that's always in charge. And then this 700-year-old one, I imagine him being the embodiment of dualities. And I call him Kyle de Vesicus de Pisces, inspired by
Wow.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Wow.
So,
That's
how
crazy.
take that one and like play around with that, and you'll
Yeah.
be like, what? Like
Yeah.
think of like mythology and stuff like that to inspire that kind of like,
Yeah. Sure.
it's craziness. But
Yeah.
I find that the beautiful thing about what you're saying as well is that it's like it's that it's kind of similar to when you get an idea and you're like, fuck, that's a good idea, I should probably do that. And then you don't do that idea, it's gonna come back around in someone else's mind and they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard of it before, Rick Rubin's book, the Creative Act, The Art of Being, dude, he talks about that, where if we pass up on an idea or something that goes into our mind, it will manifest in another way. So it's just possible that our consciousness is just connected to this or tethered to
Yeah.
this larger thing that we just don't understand, that we don't see, but we feel it, which is
Yeah.
always interesting because in my mind, like objectively, I think back on like what my younger self would think me saying this kind of stuff, and he'd be like, "What are you even blabbering about?"
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's what's funny is it's usually whenever I'm like doing that work, it's usually it immediately it's what I needed to hear. Like, you know how like when you with someone and like, oh, I needed to hear that. Like, or someone like I had someone the other day, they they're just like, you're like, I didn't know I needed this, but they're like, you're such a good man. And I'm like, then I'm like, oh fuck, why am I getting emotional right now? I'm like, I guess I needed to hear that. Um, but it's the same thing when I do this, like these like future framing or whatever you want to call it. I'll like, oh, I needed to hear that. Like that immediately made a difference. But I feel like I'll get in these, like when I do that work, I'll get into like this like really deep meditative state where like it's literally like I'm across the table from this guy. Like when I actually did this
Amazing.
last one, I was quite literally like outside at my fire pit. We had this like fire pit table thing on my back patio, and I was literally like across it, and my eyes were closed, and I was like visualizing what 80-year-old wrinkly ass Jared would look like across, and just like being with him. Like, okay, what do I do? And then waiting and listening. I think that's where most people get, because it's hard to do that without having an expectation of like, I'm expecting you something. But for me, it's just listening. Like Kyle talks about, like, just listen to silence. Like, don't like try to necessarily get something, but you're just listening and you're just being there for it, you know? So
Absolutely. Man, I love that. So you're astral projecting you and your future you, getting to interact, converse. I think that something with a practice like that, there brings peace. I think that it brings peace because we're always anticipating, so it takes the same amount of energy or the same type of energy to anticipate the good or anticipate the bad. The direction is based off of what we choose to direct it.
Sure.
And I think with the looking at the future self, it creates that level of comfort where it's like, I survived. Like at the very least, you survived. So then being able to chat with your older self that way, and then him being able to like maybe even joke around with you and be like, oh man, like I remember when I was worried about that. Don't even worry about it, bro. I think that there's something so cool with that kind of like visualization where
Totally.
where we are showing up for ourselves, we're trusting ourselves, and we're developing that compassion to ourselves. And I think that's peaceful. That's presence.
Agreed. I would agree.
Man, shit. What's kind of like what do you think in your opinion is the maybe I won't go there. Maybe I'll save that one for later. Now I'll go there. So what do you think is one, so since we already opened up the door of things that you haven't that you have shared now that you haven't shared before, taking that another step where you're manifesting your future self, you're astral projecting yourself into your backyard, where else do you think there could be like a crazy thing that you actively participate in where you're just like, oh man, I'm freaking nuts?
I don't know, man. To be honest, you mean like an outcome, like what I'd like to do, like things like that, or like, or you mean like me projecting my 80-year-old self and getting advice from the dude, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
It's either, the craziest is usually on those kind of things. It's either that, or I'll do like my therapist will give me some like crazy inner child prompts, or some other mentors have, where I'll go the other way. I'll go back, like, I mean, it's the epitome of reparenting, where you go back metaphorically in your brain or you on paper and have the conversation you needed to have when you were 6 or 13 or whatever, if an event happened. And things like that. So there's been some inner child work I've done. So on the other end, so like talking to 80-year-old Jared, well, like maybe I should talk to 13-year-old Jared who was really struggling. And because that changes things. And I bring this a lot into like our work with clients too. Like most of our clients, like if I had $1 for every time someone said, yeah, mom took me to Weight Watchers with her at 9, and I go, you ever talked to her before? Not your mom, but 9-year-old you, who was just like felt what you were feeling, and they're like, no. And now and just me asking, the tears well up, and I'm like, oh, there's something there. And it will have our people do that as well. Like they have these inner child issues around weight loss, and that's never been addressed. And I go, what if I could get you in a room? I said, well, how old were you when that shit started happening? They're like 13. I go, cool. What if I could put you in a room with 13-year-old you? Would you have words? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. I go, okay, here's how to write this letter. and we'll give them like the prompts on on that, because there's a couple boxes we need to check and then let them go on that letter. But so I've done the same thing for me. So
May I ask what those prompts are? 'Cause I'm kind of
yeah,
curious.
there.
Yeah.
So there's two levels of it, because here's the thing with inner child work, you can't deny. Too often we deny an inner child because we're trying to fix it. Imagine if you had a son that felt sad. Okay. And your first reaction is, but look at all your toys. Look at all your friends. You should be happy. That's us trying to fix, versus like, you need to honor the sadness. Hey, it's okay to be sad. We all feel sad. Daddy gets sad. It's okay to be sad here. That's seeing that child, versus going, but you have all these toys. We just went to the theme park last week. You should be happy. That's trying to fix, but denying. Right. So I see people do inner child work a lot and they're denying, but that child needs to be seen. That part of you just needs to be seen. That's it, by you though. That's the tricky part. So the couple prompts we'll give is, number one, thank them. Hey, thank you. Like for example, we had a client who that's where binging started. The reason she binge ate is because mommy and daddy didn't provide, and they binge ate at their friend's house when they were 13. Well, that little fucker, that's all they could do to survive. Good for them that that 13-year-old kept them alive. Or let's say mommy and daddy fought a lot, so you turn to food. Well, that was the 6-year-old's coping skill. That's all that they knew how to do with the best of what they had. So don't judge them for that. You need to thank them for that, but then release them of their duties now, because you're 37, right? So the two sides is thank them. Number one, like, hey, like write in that letter, hey, I just want to say thank you for keeping us safe, for keeping us alive. You did the best with what you had. It's literally like you're talking to this 6-year-old or whatever age they are, thanking them and showing your appreciation for them. It's being seen, it's being heard. You're grateful, but then also release them of their duties. Hey, but I want you to know you don't have to do that anymore. Like, we're successful now. You would not believe what we've done. Like, you don't have to worry about this anymore. And like, that's when you can have the conversation with them. What's in your heart, what's in your intuition. But the two boxes that you need checked, in my opinion, are thank them for keeping you alive. Thank them for the thing, because they were just coping with the best they could for self-preservation purposes, whether it was good or bad. That was the best that they had. It's like when your kid brings you a shitty macaroni thing, that's the best they could do with their creativity. So you say thank you, like a good fucking parent. So you're not like, oh, this is shitty, that's not even in the lines, it looks like you puked on it. Like, you don't do that. You thank them because they did the best that they could. You're looking at this through the lens of you're talking to a 6-year-old. So thank them. But then also, I think there's a level of like, release them from their duties. Like, you don't have to do this anymore. I had a client do this who was really struggling with binge eating. I gave her the same prompts. I said, I want you to thank little so-and-so for keeping you safe, but then also tell her it's okay that she gets, like, if she gains weight, because she was scared. She was so terrified she'd get fat. She's so scared to eat because she just cannot fathom the thought of gaining weight. And I said, I want you to write a letter to yourself, thanking yourself from when you were little for for doing the best that they could. But then also, I want you to tell them that you're going to give them permission to gain weight if they need to, and that you'll love them regardless. And she was instantly free. Instantly. And guess what happened? She lost more weight. Ironically, because she quit chasing it. So those are usually the couple prompts, and then whatever else comes out, so.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Those are good. That's some good stuff right there, dude. Oh man. Well, like I was mentioning before, that lines up with that one's a big one. That lines up with the head, the heart, and the intuition, big time. And I've been familiar with it, but the prompts part intrigued me because I understood the concept of it, but maybe I just haven't looked into it enough to have been introduced to prompts. So that was very, very helpful. It created a lot more of a structure for me to like think about. I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that.
Yep.
I like that.
Need a framework. Everything needs a framework.
Agreed. Dude, mental frameworks are whatever it is, I think the thing that's cool is that whatever's in the mind, however it is in reality, is irrelevant. Because if it's in the mind, then we can create our own mental frameworks for almost anything. Like for me, I think of things in like a mind palace. Like I think that kind of concept is really neat too. But I got 2 questions that I like to end my podcasts with. And they're quite a bit of fun, I like to think. But to set the scene, set the tone for the first one, super simple. It's at the end of your days, a little bit past 80-year-old you. So it's at the end of your days. Any content, anything you've ever created, any books you've ever written, any speeches you've ever done, they no longer exist. The people that are around you, the people that you care for, you get to impart a piece of wisdom that they pass on. What piece of advice would you want to pass on?
This is a Lewis Howes one. I think that's why I first heard this idea on his. The first time I heard this, it's still the same answer, and it's nothing we've touched on at all. This was a game changer when it first was impressed upon me, and it's that you're good enough right now, and you don't have to earn worthiness is the biggest one. When I learned that for myself, it was a game changer because I thought I had to, and you don't chase. You don't get to. There's no achievement you get to. The ego won't let you. Like if you were to say, like that was one is when if you were to say, okay, ego, at what point am I good enough? What qualifies? It like breaks. It can't have, it goes, at what point, like quantifiably, am I good enough? How much money do I have to make? How many people do I have to help? And it literally doesn't have an answer. So, but if all my work got taken and I could only have one thing like on a tombstone, it would be, you're good enough right now and you don't have to earn worthiness.
I really like that one. And it totally is a Lewis Howes one. Instead of 3, I just have the 1.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So question number 2, the very best version of you that you envision, all the characteristics you have adopted that you wish to have, the ones that you do not wish to have, you have eliminated. That person is sitting next to you right now. What piece of advice does he have for this season of your life?
Trust is going to work out. That's actually, that was one of the biggest 80-year-old Jared things when I was doing. I have a whole page of 80-year-old Jared advice, but when you said that, the very first to the front of my mind was just trust it's all going to work out just fine. So
nice. I love that. Well, folks, that's what I've got for you in today's episode. Where can people find you, Jared?
I hang out for most of my other content. I hang out most days on Instagram and TikTok at Real Jared Hamilton on both of those. If you like the longer, deeper stuff, my podcast is called Dieting from the Inside Out. That's everywhere podcasts are found and on YouTube. Or you can just go to dietingfromtheinsideout.com and we have the whole show site with the blog and all that stuff. But otherwise, that's where you can find me most of the time. So
excellent. I'll also have those links posted down below. And if you love today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Take a screenshot and share it to your Instagram stories and tag me with my handle at Dapper Dude Kyle, along with at Real Jared Hamilton. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, keep up the kindness. And I hope your day treats you as good as you look.